Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions. My co-host Stacie here to talk about the original Quantum Leap, Season 5, Episode 1, titled Lee Harvey Oswald, Part 1 and 2. Now, this episode originally aired as a single entity. That is how we are treating it as such, as a single episode. But it is basically 2 episodes, so this is Episode 1 and 2 that we are talking about today. The episode's description, and Happy New Year's, everyone.
Happy New Year's!
Yes. The episode's description reads as follows. For part 1, Sam's leap takes a dramatic turn when he begins leaping randomly throughout the life of Lee Harvey Oswald, accused assassin of President John F. Kennedy. Matters are complicated further when Sam's mind becomes entangled with Oswald's. Parts 2 description reads as follows. As the date for Dallas draws nearer, I'm actually not even sure that's a word, but yeah, it sounds good. Oswald's personality is getting harder to control. Al is finding it harder to connect with Sam. Is Sam supposed to save the president or unearth the conspiracy? The episode was written by Donald P. Belzerio, and the episode was directed by James Whitmore Jr. That's both parts 1 and 2. He last directed The Leap for Lisa, and he directs 5 more episodes this season, including the 3 trilogy episodes and the series finale. And of course, we've talked about James Whitmore Jr. plenty of times. He was in that episode that Runaway, I think it was. No, not Runaway. 9.5 months, where he actually made an appearance as an actor.
8.5 months.
8.5 months. I always say that. And James Whitmore Jr., by the way, also popped up. I recently noticed him directing 2 episodes of the series Evil, which I recently started watching. Good series. I totally recommend you check it out. It comes up frequently in our discussions. Plenty of actors that we've talked about have appeared in that series. This episode takes place October 5th, 1957 to November 22nd, 1963. That's not confusing at all.
Yeah, I think I clocked 9 leaps
Yes.
in this episode.
And there were a couple of times where I was confused, like, did he leap, or is this just
There's definitely a
continuation?
few spots that
Yeah.
are open for interpretation.
Right.
But yeah, I came up with 9 the way I took my notes.
Okay. And the episode originally aired on September 22nd, 1992. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on the platforms of this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered, Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to the channel. All right, so shout-outs. Former President Jimmy Carter died. Rest in peace. Along with Olivia Hussey. Olivia was an actress who appeared in Psycho 4 as Norman's mother, a younger version of that character before she died. She also appeared in It, the miniseries, the original one, as well as Romeo and Juliet. This would be a earlier version of that movie that actually achieved some controversy back in its day.
Just recently too, I believe.
Yes.
Wasn't it just like last year? There's something
That they
came
started
up
that
about
they started talking about it. The
about
childhood
how
nudity.
they were
Yeah.
underage.
Yeah.
And this is probably a good time to bring up the fact that I'm having some throat thing happening
Yes.
right now. So I apologize if I'm making some weird noises.
Yes, and I think I probably will be talking a little bit more just to make sure that my co-host doesn't have to talk as much.
I was perfectly fine an hour ago. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what's going on with me at this moment. But
Yes, but as they say, the show must go on. Also, shout-outs to Mimi Gallup and Alpha. I know you guys made comments in our last Quantum Leap podcast, The Leap for Lisa. I did not go back and check out what those comments were.
it's been a minute.
Yes, we've had like 1,000 things that we've done since then.
Why don't you tell everybody what shows we've covered since we've been
let's
on
see.
Quantum Leap hiatus?
There was Teacup. What else did we do? Teacup from Sullivan's Crossing. We did Earth Abides, which just recently ended. Yeah, we did a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, we've been very busy.
Yes. This is the first time. I mean, like, we could have probably started doing this again, like in the last week or so of the new year, but we just decided to wait until now in the new year to do this. Stacie, I'm not sure if you know anything about how this episode came about, because I actually have some information on that. And I'm curious if you know anything.
I don't have any of those details. I just remember, that Bellisario really wanted to do this, and it was kind of his pet project.
Yeah, so first of all, there was NBC's mandate to do more famous people, for Sam to leap into or at least interact with more famous people. That was part of it as a means to try to boost ratings to continue the series. It didn't end up working, but that's one of the reasons why season 5 is littered with like a bunch of crazy leaps that Sam was not doing in the past, like such as leaping into Elvis or so on and so forth.
This was his first actual leap into a known person.
Right. This specific leap came about because Belzerio did an interview, which I happened to notice on YouTube, where he discussed how he actually met Oswald many, many years before in a scene that's actually depicted in this episode. Right. Belzerio is a character within this episode, which is a special kind of humorous. But we actually see that scene at one point. But he met the man, and years later, when the assassination of Kennedy happened, he was basically like, "Oh, Oswald did it totally." He was 100% convinced, based on his meeting with Oswald back in the day, that he was in fact responsible for assassinating John F. Kennedy. Also, his son believed in the whole conspiracy of John F. Kennedy, that it was actually a conspiracy, and he wanted to show his son through a piece of television that was not in fact the case, that it was a single assassin, which, to my mind, we already have a creatively misguided motivation for creating a television show, because how are you actually proving that Oswald was the sole assassin through a television show? You really can't do that.
Well, you can't do that because nobody knows for sure.
Right.
I mean, that's the whole point of this story. Yeah. It's been depicted in fiction dozens and dozens of times with all different theories playing out.
And I'm pretty sure that I actually disagree with his conclusion. Like, I'm not sure that this wasn't some kind of conspiracy of some kind with Oswald at the center of it. Sure, I'm sure he was the sole assassin, but I think he was part of a plan. And I'm not going to get into any of that, but yeah, I basically don't agree with his conclusion here. But it's a shaky ground with which to form a Quantum Leap episode out of. And before I get any further into my opinion on the episode, I'm going to give you a chance to tell me what your thoughts on this week's episode are.
Well, Lee Harvey Oswald has never been one of my favorite episodes. Although, of course, it is one of those highlight episodes. You know, it's one that's always talked about and thrown around a lot in discussions. I think for what they were trying to do, which was to kind of tell this historical story from a particular lens, to hit different points in this person's life, I think they did a good job telling the story they wanted to tell. However, it doesn't necessarily feel like an episode of Quantum Leap. It feels like its own thing. It feels like a TV special.
Yeah. It absolutely does not feel like a Quantum Leap episode, like, at all. It lacks the things that Deborah Pratt always said made a good Quantum Leap episode. It doesn't have the heart. It doesn't have hope. And I forgot what the other H was, but...
humor.
Humor.
Aren't there four of them?
I thought it was three, but...
Hope, humor, heart...
History?
History. Okay, it has that.
Yeah.
It definitely has history.
It has a history. There's definitely some humor in the episode. But we don't get a chance to actually care about anybody in this episode, like a typical Quantum Leap episode,
Well, that's the thing is, also, most of the people in this episode are real people.
Right.
It's very different. I'll just say that. It's very different from most Quantum Leap. Even the other episodes that feature famous people. This is just different.
Yeah. I have watched this episode numerous times over the years and had a different reaction to it every single time. I've been dreading talking about this episode for a while now. I knew it was coming because I didn't really know. I knew I had things to say about it, but I didn't know what I was going to say overall about the quality of the episode. And there's a new question that comes into season 5 because season 5 is a very different show.
Right.
In the sense that we're now leaping into, famous people and getting to know famous people. My question is the story that we are telling worth it? And in the case of Lee Harvey Oswald, I kind of have to consider this a failure on some levels, in the sense that it's ambitious, but I don't think the story that we overall tell here is really worth the 2 hours that we tell, particularly when we get to the conclusion of this episode, which, oh my God, my 11-year-old self, I was 11 years old, I was about to be 12 when this episode aired. My 11-year-old self, when he saw that ending, groaned. He was like, "You have got to be kidding me." And time has not lessened that feeling.
I remember that you have that opinion about this. I have mixed feelings about the conclusion of this episode.
I get, on one hand, that, this is a demonstration that we now live in the world that Sam Beckett created.
Right.
On the other hand, did we really need to spend this much time getting to that conclusion?
Well, I think what it is they wanted to tell this story, but they needed a reason to tell it within the Quantum Leap universe.
And I think they fail at that.
So they need a reason to be like, well, what is he there to do?
Right.
And we don't want to just be like, oh, he failed.
Right.
They wanted to give something positive in there, right? So they made up here's a positive thing he did.
Right. I don't think it does not work for me, like, overall. Now, I would say this episode has a great Scott Bakula performance. Bakula is terrific in this episode. Like, he has to morph between being Oswald and being Sam.
Right.
And he does so seamlessly. You can see Sam morph into both characters, and he does a great job with that. Stockwell is also very good in this episode. But really what this comes down to is a loose collection of scenes that don't really amount to anything. The parts don't quite equal the whole, in my opinion.
And I think
there are some great scenes in this episode, but it doesn't coalesce into something.
I think one thing is, like I said, it doesn't feel like a Quantum Leap episode. Right. Because we never really get an explanation of why the heck is this happening.
Right.
Why did this leap happen, and why did that leap happen, and why did the other leap happen? Mm-hmm. There's a couple of, like, random thoughts thrown around of why the whole thing's happening, but none of it's ever really comes full circle, and it definitely doesn't explain all these different leaps and all these different moments in history that we're visiting.
Right.
In the end, really, it's just like, well, here's moments of history that we know, so that's where we're visiting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's silly.
Right.
It's silly because that's not what Quantum Leap is. Every leap is supposed to be something.
Mm.
And I feel like they could have tightened that up with just a few extra lines of dialogue explaining what the heck went wrong that he's, randomly leaping.
I mean, that's the other thing is, like, some of these scenes go on forever and ever and ever. We really could have tightened some of this up.
Sure.
Like, we could have, like, there's entire scenes where we could lose and not lose a thing in this episode telling the story that they want to tell. One more thing before just getting into it and anything else that you want to say. Willie Garson, who plays Lee Harvey Oswald in this episode, first of all, he appeared in the series prior. Mm-hmm. He was in Play It Again, Seymour.
Right, he was Seymour. I
am a fan of this actor. He was in The X-Files. He was in Groundhog Day, which we intend to cover. And he was in, Sex and the City and a couple other things.
3 episodes of Stargate 1.
Yeah. I feel like he is hopelessly miscast as Lee Harvey Oswald. He doesn't work. Like, and I don't think it's the actor's fault, necessarily. He's just miscast as the character. Watch Sam's performance as Oswald, and then put Willie Garson into that role, and the performances do not match up. Like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, the two different various performances. It just, all in all, I just kind of feel like... I don't
know if I agree with that or not.
No.
Because all the times, all of his scenes, we don't really get to see him being Oswald.
We don't...
like, we get to see him pretending to be the good guy.
Yeah, gotcha.
And we get to see him being Sam.
Okay.
But we don't really get to see him just being himself. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear that. But at the same time, like, I know Willie Garson. And it just doesn't, like, I cannot see him performing the role the way that Scott Bakula did when he was morphing into Oswald and being this angry, violent person. It just doesn't jive with who Willie Garson is. I mean, that's just my opinion. That's my feeling on it.
I feel like it was probably more,
maybe
based on his appearance than his acting.
Maybe there is some biases from me knowing the actor and what else he's done that I don't really see him being able to play this character.
Sure.
But, yeah, that's just my opinion. I mean, do you have anything else to say before diving in?
No, I think everything I have to say we can hit while we're doing the scenes.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so the episode begins. We have the new theme song.
Which I hate.
Yes, it's the jazzier, updated version. This was quite controversial back in its day. I'm pretty sure it did not debut originally when this episode originally aired.
I think it did.
I'm not so sure. I think it started with the whole pictures of John F. Kennedy and all that stuff and the credits and.
Well, the way it's packaged now.
Yeah.
Is also the way that Brian has it listed. So I was counting on Brian's description on Al's Place very heavily while I was taking my notes because there's a lot going on in
I'm
this
pretty sure
episode.
there's probably some scenes missing then from the original as well.
So here's what I was going to say is I'm pretty sure when he did that episode guide, which was the very last episode done, because I don't know if you remember the whole controversy when we were all helping contribute to get the episode guides updated just a few months ago. This was that last episode that somebody else was supposed to do, and I'm not going to name who.
I forgot whose responsibility that
and didn't do it.
Right.
And then Brian did it very last minute. And so I'm pretty sure that this is the same version of the episode, like the Roku version, the split in two version, that he used to write the episode guide.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't think he pulled out a copy of the original uncut
right, okay.
version.
So there was nothing on houseplace.com that wasn't in the Roku version.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, because I just know the circumstances of when that got written.
Gotcha.
And I found a few errors and a few things in it even and sent him, and he has updated them.
Gotcha.
Now my name's on the page too.
Oh, sweet.
Yay. I forget what I was getting at with all that. So the way he has it listed is the way that we saw it play taking these notes, which is Saga Cell, new theme song, and then the pictures. I'm not positive how it aired in the original.
I think there's a strong possibility that the new theme song did not play for that.
Now I'm positive if I read Matt Dale's article on this episode a little closer, it would very specifically tell us those differences. But by the time I got to that point, and I did go through the book looking for a couple very specific things, but I was very done with these notes by then. I did not read. It's like a 5-page listing in Beyond the Mirror Image about Lee Harvey Oswald, and I definitely was not reading it in that close a detail to find those type of things. But they're in there. I know those details are in there. That's one of those things that Matt was very particular about, was exactly what are the differences between every single version, like down to the second differences. So if anybody's really curious, that's where you can find that information, is in Matt Dale's Beyond the Mirror Image.
Well, I know what I'm doing when we finish up here. I think I'm gonna read that little section from your book.
Yeah. I mean, again, I looked at the article, but I was looking for a couple very specific things, and I was very, very quickly skimming because I was already very done with this.
No, I hear you. This episode was a pain in the butt to take notes.
It's a lot.
So yeah, the new theme song, it was controversial back in the day. I always kind of like certain aspects of it, but there are it definitely doesn't. Listening to it now, it definitely does not totally work. Like there's parts of it that I like, but then there's parts of it that like, this does not sound right being sped up the way it is.
I hate it. I've always hated it, and I'm happy to skip it and just listen to the original.
And I will say that it was so controversial that for the final episode, it was changed back to the original.
Right.
At the request of the fans. Okay, so moving along.
So then we get those pictures you were talking about.
Yeah. And we have a title card. The following story is based on the known evidence and established facts collected in 3 decades since the JFK assassination. And then we see these pictures.
And these are all real-life pictures.
Yep.
And that's something really important to remember, is this episode is trying to give us a historical perspective. Mm-hmm. Now, they are taking some liberties, of course, because there's a lot of unknowns.
Right.
And they kind of had to take a stance, right, in order to, like, go into this setting. Like, they had to decide what they're telling is the truth.
From the sounds of things, Belzerio went into the episode having already determined the truth, and that's why he crafted the episode.
But that's what I'm saying, is you would have to know what story you're trying to tell.
Right, of course.
But beyond
you do have to choose one way or the other.
Beyond that, it's taking very specific points in history and facts from different sources, right? So there's like his arrest in New Orleans. We know all for a fact what happened that day, like based on the police report. So they made a scene out of that. And like you said, his Belisario's own interaction with him. We made a scene about that.
Which is funny because that means that Belsario is interacting with Oswald, who's being inhabited by Sam Beckett. So when Belsario met Oswald all those years ago, Sam Beckett was inhabiting his body. So he didn't actually meet Oswald.
But Oswald was also possessing Sam's body at the same time.
Fair enough. Gotcha.
But, what was I saying? Like, oh, okay. So history. It's history, and so much of this is just like the facts plus kind of our interpretation of the facts. There's not a whole lot of like, here's fictional storytelling happening.
Right.
And that's important to remember as we go, that this is kind of like a documentary a little bit, you know? I mean, obviously there is fiction around it and embedded in it, but the main outline is we're following historical records. We're doing things that happened, directly from Oswald's journals. We're meeting characters that were all real people in Oswald's life. And I didn't look up all these people, like some of the particular like military people. I don't know if they are like the names of real people or based on real people. But, especially by the time we get to the day of the assassination, they're all real people.
Yeah.
Like they're named for the real people. And I even got to the point where I'm trying to figure out who some of these characters were. I had to just start Googling who these real people were in order to figure it out. And then that got me the answers. So seeing these pictures really just kind of sets that tone, right?
Yeah.
Like, here's pictures of JFK, Jackie Kennedy. Here's pictures of Lee Harvey Oswald as he's going from a child growing up. And it's really just like, here's the world we're in. We're not in Quantum Leap right now.
Right.
This isn't, here's all these pictures of Sam wearing fruit on his head and all this silly stuff. We're like, here's Kennedy. This is the story we're telling. We are talking about something very real and very historical here.
Okay. So the last picture that we see is the famous picture of him holding the rifle and some kind of book. Do you know what that book is? Newspaper. Gotcha.
It was
The Daily Worker?
Probably.
Okay.
Either that or something along those lines.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The picture leaps, which is very reminiscent, by the way, of the very final scene of the series. And in leaps Sam Beckett, who is, of course, confused. His wife, Marina, snaps his picture and asks how many pictures are they going to have to take, and Sam answers in Russian, which shocks him. Marina is played by Natasha Pavlik. 51 credits for her, including 2 episodes of Jag. That's another Belsario series. The movie Rounders, and an episode of Wings. You got anything different?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Although, the way you said her name, I'm still looking at.
Pavlik?
I would have said Pavlovic.
Oh, that sounds a little bit more legit. But...
It's a Russian name.
Yes. So they go on and on, with Sam being surprised he can speak Russian and having a protracted conversation about how many words she can speak in English. All right, so why are we spending so much time on this?
Okay, so one thing particular about that moment, Sam was being Sam, trying to encourage her to speak English.
Gotcha.
Because a known fact is that Oswald did not encourage Marina to learn English.
Okay.
He, in fact, kind of insisted that she speak Russian as much as possible.
Okay.
He was not they weren't teaching each other. She was teaching him Russian, and he was telling her to just be Russian and stop trying to be English.
Interesting. Okay.
So the moments where Sam is like, oh no, you know a lot of words, tell me more words. That was a very Sam.
Okay.
Which I think is important because it only lasts a moment before Oswald starts kicking in.
All right. So she calls him Alec and thinks he's playing some kind of game. He violently grabs her at one point. This is him morphing into Oswald for a second. It's an early sign of Oswald's control over him. And then he morphs back into Sam and kind of apologizes. And one of the phrases she knows is, capitalists exploit the working class. And he's like, how do you know that? And it's, of course, from Oswald himself. Before she makes fun of him for speaking Russian like a child, to which Sam again becomes shockingly violent.
He hits her.
Yeah. Which upsets them both. He tries to apologize, and she goes off basically crying. Sam wonders what's wrong with him, who the heck has he leapt into? And he suddenly has the urge to grab the rifle, aims, and he sees Kennedy in his scope, because this is 1963, by the way. This is just before the assassination.
So yeah, let's go over each leap.
Yeah.
So this first leap, he's leapt into March 21st, 1963 in Dallas. Now, if anybody's not aware, the actual assassination takes place November 22nd, 1963.
Right, so the next day.
Not the next day. We're 7 months earlier.
Oh, okay.
See, I got to keep you on the timeline too.
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
So in this moment, he sees the scope. I'm calling that leap number 2.
So you think he leapt at that moment?
Absolutely, because he's literally seeing, he's seeing Kennedy, both Kennedys in the car through the scope. He, for just a split moment, leapt into the moment.
Okay, so I kind of always thought that as like some kind of imagining of Oswald's, like some kind of like...
Oswald had no, he didn't have this plan yet as of March.
Right, because this was 7 months earlier.
Right,
okay.
So, yeah, that's not the case, because, I mean, this is even before, let me grab a date here. It's April, so we're 2 weeks before he attempts his other assassination.
Oh, so actually in my notes, I literally have in my notes, is this Oswald's imagining? Like, I didn't know what this was.
I mean, and this is one of those moments where it's kind of up for interpretation, because just a few minutes later, he's going to be like, oh, I leapt, talking about from there to Japan.
Right, and he
doesn't acknowledge that he leapt twice.
Right.
I'm taking it as he did leap twice. Leap 1 was March 21st, Dallas. Leap 2 is he was on November 22nd, just for a split second. And then leap 3 is when he ends up in Japan.
Okay, so...
Which is how Brian interpreted it in his episode guide, and I agree with that.
Okay.
It's the only thing that makes sense to me as to why we would see that image of the Kennedys when he looks into the scope.
Gotcha. All right, so the third leap, October 5th, 1957. He's leaping into Japan on an
Atsugi, Japan.
This is a Marine base, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
He's in the U.S. Marine Corps.
Sam, shouts and finds himself having leapt into Oswald on a shooting range, with Sergeant Lopez above him, who's laughing at him, saying, hey, the thing about bullets is you can't call them back. But he hit the target dead on. And this guy is played by Rennie Santori, 104 credits for him, including an episode of Dave's World, which I'm only naming because it's Dave's World, which was a series by that Harry Anderson, the late Harry Anderson, was in. And 3 episodes of NYPD Blue, and 4 episodes of Seinfeld. You got anything different?
He was also in Brewster's Millions.
Okay.
And a lot of other stuff.
Yes. Lopez tells him that he could qualify as expert, I think, if he makes his next shot.
Yeah, he's doing very well, in other words. That is the highest rank. So he's doing a weapon. He's getting accessed right now.
Right.
For his... I don't know what that's called. Whatever grade shooter you are.
Right. Lopez is impressed, but also insults Sam at the same time.
He's losing patience with Sam very quickly. Right. You can tell pretty right off that Oswald and Lopez don't have a good relationship.
Mm-hmm. It actually kind of seems like this is the first time they're meeting, because he makes a reference to somebody saying that he was told that he's a loudmouth. So it seems like he didn't know that from personal experience until this.
I'm going to disagree with that just because of their meeting later. And I don't feel like he could have that much hostility from him. From this
one encounter?
Just based on this one encounter with Sam.
All right. I see what you're saying. So Sam loads his gun and marvels that he did it without knowing how, and that he could have hurt his thumb if he got it caught in there, which is just annoying Lopez even further. Sam asks how far the target is, which is something that also infuriates Lopez, because Sam should know how far the target is.
Right.
I think he mentions 500 yards as a number.
I don't have that, but that sounds right.
Okay. After annoying Lopez some more, he again tells him to shoot. When Oswald's personality asserts itself, he says under his breath, hey man, love you too. Which I can only tell that he says this from the closed captioning. I honestly couldn't never hear what he actually said until I watched the closed captioning here. This further pisses off Lopez, and basically he does like a Three Stooges nose grab, and then basically has Sam shoot. As Sam looks confused and apologizes for what just happened. And he's continuously flipping between Sam and Oswald. Sam gets ready to shoot, talking about shooting on the farm. In his mind, he's saying this.
And I want to note, Sam, even though it's Sam doing his regular monologue and talking about the farm, he's got kind of like an Oswald tone in his voice.
Yeah.
Like you can hear, or I can't anyways, hear kind of a different tone in his voice from his usual monologues.
He does sound more subdued.
I feel like even though this is Sam in this moment, he's still influenced by Oswald.
Gotcha.
And equally later, when Oswald's talking, and not fully in Sam mode, because we only have that like in one time, but there's like another time when Oswald's talking where I was like, I feel like that's Sam's voice a little bit. Like, did they do I don't even know, like, if I think they did an actual, like, some voice altering, but there was something there that was noticeable.
Interesting. So, as he gets ready to shoot, Al appears just in time to interrupt Sam's shot, causing him to miss badly. This is the first appearance for Al at the 10-minute and 38-second mark. Sam tells Al he startled him. Of course, Lopez thinks he's blaming him. And a flag waves. Lopez says, Maggie's drawers. And Al explains that that's a euphemism for he missed the target. I mean, that's kind of obvious at this point, but Lopez gives him his final score and said if he hadn't jerked off the final round, he would have had expert. And Al comforts him by saying, sharpshooter isn't bad.
Yeah, I thought sharpshooter was the best, but apparently not.
Apparently not. So Lopez calls him Oswald, and this is where Sam realizes that he's leapt into Harvey Oswald, which of course Al helpfully informs him. Lopez gives him some advice. If he wants to go home with all his body parts, to zip his lips. Sam responds, slipping into Oswald's personality, aye, Sergeant Beener. Okay. For many years, I did not know what Sam was saying here. I didn't know why Al was reacting to it the way he did, why Lopez got pissed, what this even meant. Because, back in the day, you didn't have closed captioning. For years, I was trying to figure out what exactly he was saying here. Until, I watched the closed captioning, so I got what he said, but I still didn't understand it, because I didn't know that this was a racial slur. Which eventually I went on Reddit and asked this question and finally eventually got that answer. That this is a slur against the Mexican people, I believe it is. But yeah, I didn't know what he was saying here. I didn't know why Al was reacting the way he did and so on and so forth. But now I do.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving along.
The whole point of this isn't Sam.
Right.
Right? Oswald is constantly butting into this conversation and being a really kind of horrible person.
Yeah.
To make you understand why Lopez really hates him.
Right. And kind of give motivation for why Lopez kind of acts the way he does next time we see him.
But I still don't think this could be their only interaction. I feel like they already had this kind of animosity between them.
Okay. So this shocks Al as Sam kind of looks at Lopez smugly. Lopez glares at him and then insincerely smiles and says, see you on liberty, Oswald. Now, where is he talking about seeing Oswald?
So that means when they're not on duty.
Gotcha. Okay.
In other words, the scene we're going to get later.
Gotcha.
When he doesn't have to be professional.
So this is basically a subtle threat.
Not so subtle. Yeah.
No. Okay. Al yells at Sam, asking him if he's out of his mind. He says, you can't talk to anybody like that. Never mind a sergeant. And Sam says, he didn't say it. And Al says, excuse me, I heard you. And Sam says the words came out of his mouth, but he didn't say them. And Al says he's scaring him. And Sam is right there with him. Sam says he leaped twice. Maybe it has something to do with leaping twice into the same person. This is news to Al. He's not aware of the first leap.
Yeah, because Al just got around to come and find Sam. So
Right.
totally missed the other leap, or two leaps, as
Right.
I think. But I think that was just so quick that Sam didn't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
It was not even like a full leap, but just kind of like he blipped there in between leaps. And maybe it goes back to the whole thing of like, what the heck is happening that he's bouncing around in this person's life anyways.
Right.
Was the whatever that's leaping him going to send him to Dallas?
Right.
And he got sidetracked?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's happening?
Right.
What are we doing? Why are we jumping around? We really don't know. You can only speculate.
Right. So Sam says the first time is when Marina was taking his picture, which Al says that picture was a fake. And this is Al taking the position that the whole JFK assassination thing was a conspiracy. And if you're going to tell the story and go this direction, this is kind of a smart way to do it. Have Al be the one who's all, the conspiracy theory. And as the episode goes along, prove him wrong.
Right.
If you're gonna tell the story, this is the way to do it. But Sam says Marina called him Alec. Al does a trace looking for someone from the CIA or FBI to prove his theory, but that was the name that Alec used Oswald used in Russia, and also what Marina used to call him.
Right.
Al is saying that doesn't mean she took the picture and that he was Oswald, but Sam is pretty certain that he was.
Now, even if Al missed this, wouldn't Ziggy know?
You would figure.
Would Ziggy be able to look back and see where Sam was 15 minutes ago?
Well, if they haven't locked on to Sam yet, would they know where he was?
But you would think there'd be a residual of the leap, right?
I mean, I guess, but they never locked on to Sam, so they never really figured out where he actually was.
I don't know. That's all very confusing how that works.
Yeah. I mean, just...
Ziggy should know everything. It's Ziggy.
But look at the series finale, for instance. Sam leaps around in time as himself. They can't find him because they can't lock onto him. So they had no idea where he actually was. And I'm assuming that because Al didn't actually visit Sam in that first week, that they didn't even know that he was even there.
I guess.
That's my interpretation. But moving along. Al is still saying... never mind. I already said all that. So Sam can feel him in him. And Sam talks about the residual of the person left behind, which is something that did not come up until Dreams, by the way. That was the first time that we really had that kind of experience with Sam. Al says no, when he leaps, it's his personality and his knowledge. But then he notices that Sam field stripped an M1, which is his weapon, which is not something that Sam would know on his own. And, Sam had absolutely no knowledge of that.
Right, it's pretty much proof that what Sam is saying is true.
Al argues once again against him being Oswald, but eventually says that Sam can handle a little bit of Oswald. And Al ends up bringing up the leap back, which, by the way, Sam says he didn't remember when he during the leap in Dreams, or that leap. But now he does remember.
Yeah, I think that's the way Swiss cheese works. Is sometimes you remember things and sometimes you don't. It's not that something is gone for good. The memories just kind of come and go.
So Sam says that he got Al's libido and still acted like a prude, which to him is proof that he can handle Oswald's personality. I'm not sure that tracks. Like, based on how Oswald acts here, isn't there a little bit of a difference between having a high sex drive and being a murderous psychopath?
Yeah.
I mean, not that I'm saying that Oswald is a murderous psychopath, but he definitely has some anger management problems.
That is definitely what they're depicting.
Right,
He's pretty off his rocker, the way he was just so blatantly insulting Lopez without a care in the world.
I kind of wish there was a little bit more subtlety in how they portrayed Oswald, just a little bit. Like, I wish they kind of humanized him a little bit more. They do so kind of late in the episode, but I kind of wish we got to know Oswald a little bit more, other than just being an asshole, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Like,
if we're going to spend so much time with his character, it'd be good to get to know him something beyond, the murderous psychopath.
Well, I don't think that's the version of him that Belisari wanted to tell.
And I get that. Yeah,
he believed that he really was this crazy person.
Right. But the truth is probably a little bit more nuanced than this.
Yeah. But especially, I'd say, in 57.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we learn later, he's like 19 years old at this point.
Yeah.
He's a kid.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't really developed who he is yet.
So Sam wonders, what if I can't control Oswald? What if I end up assassinating the president? And Al says, it's 57. That's 6 years from now. It hasn't happened yet. Well, Sam points out that 15 minutes ago, for him, it was 6 years later. And who's to say that won't happen again? That it will end up back in that moment? And Sam says he could stop the assassination. Al says if he actually was the assassin, suggesting that Oswald was a patsy, which was the theory, and brings up all the conspiracy theories, the possibilities of, what could have possibly happened to JFK that don't involve Oswald being the sole assassin.
Right. So Al's point of view at this point is pretty much, it is a conspiracy, and the reason you're here is because it must start here, and you're here to learn the truth.
Right.
to find out the roots of the conspiracy.
So Sam doesn't remember any of these theories. He doesn't remember much about the aftermath of the whole JFK situation, but he does remember the day it happened, it was yesterday. He was 10 years old. His dad was teaching him to ride a tractor when his mom came out yelling and telling them about the president being shot. Now, I don't necessarily love this episode, and I have a lot of criticisms of it, but I do love the fact that this little story that Sam mentions here isn't just a throwaway line. It actually ends up mattering significantly to this overall story. So Sam asks if he's here to uncover a conspiracy. If he's here to uncover a conspiracy, then why didn't he stay in 63? And this goes back to your point where Al basically says, well, maybe the conspiracy started here in Japan. Sam says it doesn't look like Japan. Al points out that military bases all over the world pretty much look the same, but if you go out the gates, it's very much Japan. And he gets sidetracked with a story about Chip, who we got to meet in the season finale of season 3, which was the episode directly before this. Mm-hmm. So Sam brings him back to basically, being on point. And Al thinks that this is where the KGB contacted Oswald. Sam wonders why they were even interested in Oswald, and it's because he had a bunch of knowledge that he had, which included race car, which I believe race car was a cover name for the U-2.
Right.
Oswald starts quoting something about race car. He basically slips into Oswald mode and starts quoting his job or something along those lines.
Yeah. So basically, Sam doesn't know what the heck race car is. Al does, and he's like, "Why would they care about Oswald?" And Al's like, he knew about race car, and now suddenly Oswald slips in, and Sam knows all about race car, showing both of them oh, we might have a problem.
Right. So Sam starts freaking out. He isn't sure who's controlling whom. Al says he's going to uncover the conspiracy and change what happens in Dallas, and then goes into the imaging chamber and disappears. We cut to February 14th, 1999. Interesting that this is happening on Valentine's Day.
Also interesting that it's happening prior to the events of the leap back.
Yes.
Date-wise, which is a problem, since we already mentioned that
happened. Right, yes.
I forget the date on that, but it was much later in the year.
I wonder what Tina and Al are doing on this day. Well,
Al's a little busy here.
I guess so. He's going to spend Valentine's Day with Oswald.
Yeah.
That kind of sucks. But anyway, Al is in the waiting room with Oswald, played by Willie Garson. He's at the project. This is this isn't the first time we've seen the project. We saw it. We saw it in the premiere, the series premiere.
Right.
But the first time that we visited it since the season finale last season, which again was just an episode ago. So I don't know where I'm going with that. But anyway,
it's one of the times that we spend a lot of time there, which we spend a lot more time there in season 5 than we previously have.
And by the way, Willie Garson, I talked about some of his credits already, and so have you.
Yep.
172 credits for him. Including an X-Files episode that I do intend to cover eventually. We will talk about him again in a month.
Soon.
Yes, in Groundhog Day. And he was also in an episode of Pushing Daisies, which is a short-lived series that I really loved. So they're sparring back and forth until Oswald somehow remembers Al's name and sees himself in the mirror in the table, which you mentioned prior. That's really why would they even have that?
Of course they have only reflective surfaces in the waiting room.
Yeah.
That's not, freaky at all for someone who's not going to see their own reflection.
So we see Oswald screaming while we hear Oswald screaming while we see Sam doing it in the mirror. And this is kind of really cheesy, this little moment. It's kind of silly. But anyway, we cut to Sam doing Oswald's job. Okay, my question is, did Sam leap again?
Nope, this is still Leap 3. It's the next day.
Gotcha.
So that was October 5th. It's now October 6th. So we're still in Leap 3. The next day, he's at the... And that's the thing, is they give us dates and locations throughout the entire episode.
Right.
Not just when we leap. So it's constantly reminding us when and where we are. Which I'm glad that it is, because it is very complicated.
Yes.
To follow, all these dates and locations. Yeah, they specifically tell us it's now October 6, 57. We're at the Max 1 radar bubble, which is where Oswald works.
Right.
And this is where they are recording data for a test flight of race car.
Right. And he's doing Oswald's job proficiently, which he mentions that he's even starting to enjoy his job, but that he's going to screw up sooner or later. And sure enough, he does. He writes the numbers He's supposed to write the numbers backwards so that the people on the other side can read it, but he writes it so that only Sam can read it. He gets made fun of for this. And by the way, this is when where Al appears to tell him to write it backwards. And he reverts to the Oswald personality. He might not even have left the Oswald personality. I mean, I get the feeling that he's embarrassed as Sam, but angry as Oswald, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
In that scene.
Oswald's temper is what comes through.
Yeah, he's initially embarrassed, which is a Sam reaction, and then he gets pissed, which is Oswald reacting. Which sounds really complicated and convoluted. But anyway, a race car is some kind of top secret project, the U2, that people are working on. The people that are working on it don't even seem to know what this actually is. And one of the Briggs calculates race cars' altitude, which is above the world record, and he's told by the commanding officer that he miscalculated. I didn't take any notes of Briggs's credits or anything.
I do, of course. I got all the people.
It's Phillips McNiven who plays him.
He's in 14 episodes of Scrubs.
I did notice that.
That's the only note I took for
I
him.
looked into it, but I didn't.
That was the only thing that stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the officer who's telling him, you don't see that. No, you don't.
Right.
Is Lieutenant Abrigowitz. He is played by Ward C. Ballard, who was in an episode of Diagnosis Murder.
Okay. So Al starts talking about a bar that Oswald hangs out in, where the KGB makes contact, and then we cut to this bar.
Yeah, the bar is called Negashaya, and it's in Yamamoto.
Now, I'm assuming that once again we did not leap.
We have not leaped. Correct.
Okay, so we're in the same day, right?
We are fast forwarding again to the next day. So now it's October 7th in Yamamoto.
So he's greeted by a man who's dressed like a woman. I don't know what this is exactly.
This is a character of Joda.
Joda, okay.
Joda appears to be the proprietor of this establishment.
Right.
Who is dressed as a geisha.
Geisha, okay.
And apparently does entertain the Marines.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, some people were into that kind of thing, but
Joda is played by Rodney Kageyama. I probably said that very wrong. He was also in Quantum Leap before. He played Choo Choo in The Leap Home Part 2 Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
Which I don't know who Choo Choo is, and I don't have recollection of that, but that's a thing.
Gotcha. Someone in Tom's unit, likely.
He was also
actually no. Wait, he could have been one of the Choo Hoi. No. I think I know who he was. He was the bartender in that.
Was he? I mean, that was what I was thinking. Is that he was also like that's a very kind of similar thing, right? We're at like the local bar,
right,
where the troops are hanging out.
Yeah, I think he was the bartender in that episode. Now that I think about it,
I'd have to go look.
Yeah.
He was also in the movie Pretty Woman. I took note of.
Okay.
And yeah, so Joda is coming on to Lee,
right,
and kisses Sam.
Sam's not too comfortable
and Sam's
with
like,
this.
I wasn't prepared for this.
Right. So yeah, the dude has heard a rumor about something. Joda has heard a rumor and is asking Sam if it's true. Sam wants to know why he even wants to know, and he claims to be looking out for his girls.
Yeah, so Sam at this point is trying to uncover who's the spy.
Right.
Because according to Al, if the KGB is going to make contact, it's going to be at this bar.
Right.
And so the only reason Sam's here is to figure out who is the KGB spy, and he thinks it's Joda now because Joda's asking an awful lot of questions.
Right. So one of the girls hits on him, which another girl that I'm pretty sure is his girlfriend gets pissed at him for Sam even letting her touch him. They get into some kind of cat fight, which Sam ends up breaking up. After the fight, Sam kisses this girl, and they talk some more. Apparently, he's learning Russian from her.
Right. So I'll start with the first girl.
Okay.
Her whole title is Bar Girl. She doesn't
Gotcha.
have a name. She's played by Patty Toy, who's in 2 episodes of Babylon 5, an episode of Beverly Hills 90210, a bunch of other 1-episode appearances. But the other one, who's Lee's girlfriend, her name is Mariska. She is half Japanese and half Russian.
Okay,
Mariska,
interesting mix.
which is why Oswald has kind of flocked to her. They have a thing because Oswald's obsessed with Russia, and she's teaching him Russian. And actually, one thing that happens during this scene is she speaks Russian, and Sam goes, I used to know Russian, but I don't remember. Because at this point in time, Oswald doesn't really know Russian yet. But at the beginning of the episode, when Oswald was coming through, Sam suddenly knew Russian, because Oswald knows Russian by that point.
Right.
But he's just now learning Russian. So suddenly Sam's like, wait, I don't know what you just said, but I thought I'm supposed to know what you just said.
Right, okay. That's interesting. I didn't pick up on that.
So Mariska is played by Donna Magnani. She was in a 2000 film called Lost Voyage and a couple of shorts, I think.
Okay.
Nothing I recognized on her filmography.
So he eventually ends up slipping into the oddball personality, and the conversation ends up getting heated.
Yeah, he's really rough with her.
Right.
Because Mariska, so they talk about going to Russia. They have, apparently Mariska and Oswald have plans to go to Russia together, and she's kind of like, I'm only half Russian, and it's not a good place for me there. I'm not going to be accepted there. Like, she doesn't want to go to Russia. She wants to go to the U.S.
Right.
She wants him to take her to the States. And Oswald, of course, doesn't want to do that. The whole reason he's into this girl is because she's some link to Russia. Right? So that's why Oswald, who's popping through, gets really upset that she's even mentioning, not going to Russia. And also, something happens where he gets jealous because she mentions the other Marines.
Right, and he's basically like, oh, well, you do more than this, and
yeah. She does.
Yeah.
That's look at where you are, buddy.
Yeah, it's her job. So Al appears in the midst of this, and Sam goes to the bathroom to talk to him. Sam says he can't control Oswald's emotions anymore. He doesn't know where Sam ends and Oswald begins. Al thinks that she might be a KGB agent. Sam really doesn't think so, and based on this conversation that she just had, it seems pretty obvious that she's not a Russian agent. And she's been teaching Oswald Russian, and if you were going to have an agent, Sam argues, wouldn't you want it to be someone less conspicuous than Mariska? And Al points out, well, maybe that's why it's Mariska, because you want her hiding in plain sight, basically. She's so obvious that nobody would suspect her, is basically the argument that she is making. And he is making. They get into a debate whether Sam is going to have to sleep with her or not. And Sam says that Oswald is just interested in anything Russian. He's been spouting his word, and he knows this. Al asks him why he knows this, and he says he's been spouting his words like a trained puppet, and points to Oswald's Karl Marx book, The Communist Manifesto, and says that this is basically his Bible. This is what he believes in him. This is what motivates him. And during this conversation, who should appear in the bathroom but Sergeant Lopez, who they're both on liberty now. And this is the start of some trouble. Lopez basically comes in with a couple of guys mocking Oswald, basically going, oh, let's shake the hands of the best Marine ever. And basically he says he wants to teach Oswald a lesson. This escalates into a fight as Sam slips in and out of Oswald during this entire encounter. He's basically insulting Lopez as Oswald, but trying to cool the situation down as Sam.
Right.
It's a very interesting dynamic, and Bakula is so great in this episode, and this is a very good demonstration of just how great Sam is. Scott Bakula is in this episode. So eventually,
yeah, it's a full-on fight.
Right. Yeah. Eventually,
it spills through the entire bar.
Yep.
Everybody in the whole establishment ends up getting involved in this.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like Sam has been bested, but then he brings out a mini little gun, pistol. Behringer, yep.
Is that the word?
I think so. It sounds right. If someone wants to correct the record on that one, feel free to comment. So he has this gun, Behringer, whatever, at Lopez's throat. Sam says he's ready for his lesson. And Al is desperately trying to get Sam to stop doing this. He tells Ziggy that he needs a way to get through to Sam. And by the way, this was one of my trivia questions when we did season 5 of the trivia. Ziggy tells him to ask Sam the 4 fundamental interactions in quantum physics. And he keeps asking the question. Eventually, Sam is able to answer it, and then he's asked about the Pauli exclusion principle. Now, I know the fundamental interactions of quantum physics is actually a thing. I didn't look into the Pauli exclusion principle.
I'm guessing it is.
Yeah.
I don't feel like they're making stuff up.
Right. And basically, it's that 2 human souls can
no 2 fermions can occupy a given quantum state at the same time.
And nor can 2 human souls.
Right. In other words, he's saying this repressed Oswald so Sam's personality could come through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this particular line right here about the 2 fermions or whatever and the Pauli exclusion principle is in direct conflict with everything about the Revival series and its entire premise.
I was just about to say that.
What was their whole thing? Like there was
quantum entanglement.
Quantum entanglement. Yeah. I think these are opposite principles. Not that I know anything about science, but that those feel like opposite ideas to me.
Right.
They should not coexist in the same universe.
Mm-hmm. And then Sam leaps. And this is like one of the first times that we actually see Sam leap.
Yeah. And interesting to note, other than the first leap and the very last leap, we don't see our typical leap effects.
Right.
Every time he leaps, we just see kind of like this.
Yeah, it's like a flash.
It's like a green flash.
Yeah.
And like a little noise. It's not a full leap effect. It's not blue. It doesn't take 30 seconds.
Right.
But this is leap number 4 now.
Okay.
And it's January 6th, 1959. And we're at Max 9 in Tustin, California.
And this is where we meet Sergeant Belzerio, who's looking for the duty roster to find some of his friends. Ziggy is still insistent, according to Al, that he's leaping into Oswald to uncover a conspiracy. And as he's talking to Sam, who's pretending to look for the duty roster because he doesn't actually have any clue where it is, Belzerio notices he's reading the Daily Worker. And as Oswald reveals that if he were a communist, he would be a Marxist. Belzerio asks him if he's a Marxist, what's he doing in the Marine Corps? And Sam says he doesn't know, and he leaps once again.
Okay, so before we move on, one thing that happened during this scene is my note's incomplete. He's talking to Al, right?
Yes.
And he wants to know why he leaped out of Japan when he did without conceding anything.
I did forget to put that in my notes, yeah.
But apparently there's some data indicates, and I don't know if this is like a real part of history. I didn't look into this, but what Al says is some data indicates that Oswald actually killed Lopez that night in the original history.
Okay, so
what Sam was there to do was to stop him from killing him.
All right, so let me ask you a question. In the original history, if he had killed Lopez in the bar right then and there, how the hell would he have gotten out of that bar?
Exactly.
How the hell would he have not been arrested?
Exactly.
There was way too many people around.
There's some data indicating it, meaning he was never like tried or convicted of murder. He wasn't kicked out of the Marines,
right?
Like an honorable discharge, which would have been the minimum thing that would happen.
Dishonorable.
He's not. Is that not what I said?
You said honorable.
The dis was in my throat somewhere.
Gotcha.
Prison time,
right?
Something. Not like still in the Marines. What are we? 2 years later at this point?
Well, I mean, based on what Al says
actually, we're just a little over a year later.
Al is even vague as to whether Lopez was actually killed or not.
Right.
So
he was like, "There's some data indicates."
So what the heck does that even mean? Honestly, when it comes down to it.
And here's my question: is this a real thing? Is there some reference somewhere that like maybe he killed somebody but like was never caught?
I don't buy it.
I don't know. I don't get it.
Right.
I don't get this part of it.
Right. Yeah.
And how that, like, I get that they use that as like, oh yeah, he did do something and that's why he leapt.
Right.
But it doesn't fit the story.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a confusing moment for sure.
Another thing I want to say about this scene is the date is January 6, 1959, but both the duty roster and the newspaper say it's March of 59.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they changed that to January when they did the actual overlays of dates.
Interesting.
And I didn't see any reason why that's the case, but they did.
Well, maybe in the script, it was the date that showed up, like, in the actual physical things that were presented with, and Belzerio remembered it differently.
I mean, I don't...
But then again, Belzerio is the one who wrote it, so that doesn't make...
Like, the props both say March, and then they're telling us it's January, and I don't...
So there was probably a miscommunication between, like, what appeared on the props and then what was written in the script.
Right, and I don't see why either one would make any difference.
Right.
Or how, like this is the interaction that's based on Belisario's memory, not, like, some historical event.
Yeah.
So I don't get it.
Yeah.
Either way. But yeah, he's only there for like a minute, just long enough for Belisario to believe he's a crazy psycho killer.
And speaking of
and
which,
then he leaves.
Speaking of which, I get why the scene is in the episode, because this is, you're writing a scene about Oswald in history, and you're the creator of the show, and you want to show the moment where you met this man. But what's the in-universe explanation for why he's even here?
Exactly. Why are we not doing something else while we're here?
It's just like Sam leaps in to meet Donald Belzerio, the creator of Quantum Leap. Is that it?
Right. It's a very meta moment because without this moment, the project wouldn't be created.
Right.
And we'd have a really big...
paradox?
There's the word, paradox.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just sitting here making like blow-up hand motions.
All right. So, Sam leaps to Russia.
This is leap number 5, October 21st, 1959.
Now, I point to this episode quite often as Sam leaping out of the U.S. During one of the few times in the series.
Right.
I remember this part in Russia. I tend to forget that he also leaped to Japan.
Right.
Which is
He's leaping all over the place.
Yeah, basically. So, he's talking to Sergeant Yuri Kosinko.
Before we move on, I didn't tell you who played Belisario.
Oh, yeah.
Belisario was played by Matthew Charles Nelson. And his only other credit besides this was one episode of Sybil.
Oh, okay. So he wasn't actually a younger Belisario?
No, you'd think Belisario would have found, like, some relative to do that.
Yeah.
Doesn't he have, like, this really huge family?
I mean, he has a son, but at this point...
They were too young at this point.
Yeah, at that point, yeah.
I don't know. You figured he'd have found somebody more, like...
Right.
More personal to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'd think so. So, Yuri is played by Ella Baskin. That's, or Baskin, or something along those lines. He has 110 credits for him. Most notable for playing, at least most notable to me, anyway, for playing Peter Parker's landlord in the original Spider-Man movies. The original Sam Raimi trilogy. And, also interesting to note, he was in 13 Days, which is based on the Cuban Missile Crisis, which JFK, of course, was pretty involved in at the time.
Okay.
So I kind of found that interesting that he also appeared in that.
He was in 1 episode of Heroes and 2 episodes of MacGyver.
So Oswald starts to talk and spill his guts. That is where the part 1 ends. And this is the main reason why I didn't think it made any sense to just cover this like episode by episode, because this is a non-ending. Like, it's not a cliffhanger. I don't understand this.
Well,
like, why we would cut here.
Because it's halfway through.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
But... I mean, the cliffhanger is like, oh no, Sam's giving away the government secrets and gonna break history.
Uh-oh. But he's not really breaking history because it already happened.
It already happened, and it already happened the same way, and turns out he's not actually giving them anything they don't already know.
Right.
But, as a casual viewer who doesn't know the whole story of the history, you don't know that.
Right.
You're just like, oh no, what's happening here? This is not good. The other person in the room is the Major's assistant, Lieutenant Anna Guri. She's played by Erica Amato. She was in an episode of You and an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, okay. Part 2 begins with, if you're watching the Roku version, it goes through the theme song again. Goes through all the images again.
Same pictures, yeah.
And then we have
it's like 5 or 6 minutes before we get to the actual new episode.
Right. And so we begin with Al and Sam. Oh, actually, he's with Oswald.
He's with Oswald. It's now February 15th, 1999. So it's 1 day has passed. And that's interesting. 1 day has passed for Al since he first interviewed Oswald. But like 3 days have passed for Sam. Because remember, he went from like the 5th to the 6th to the 7th before he left again.
Right. Well, I think it's been mentioned more than a few times that the experience of Sam's leaps is like the time frame is not always the same for Al.
Yeah, that just seems weird, though.
Yeah, that you would be living through those leaps and then in a shorter time frame than what Al or more. I don't know. Like it was a longer time frame. Sam experienced like 5 days.
He was in Japan for at least 3 days.
Right. So he experienced more time than Al did.
He left 2 more times, but those were like just minutes.
Right.
But yeah, he spent 3 days in Japan based on the days we're being given, or 2.5 days.
Gotcha.
And it's only we started at the beginning of the Japan leap on the 14th, and now it's the 15th.
So in the time frame that Sam experienced 3 days, Al only experienced 1?
I think that's a problem. I think that's an inconsistency.
Right. I got you.
So now he's talking to Oswald. Now remember, this isn't the same Oswald that he talked to yesterday. This is now the one from 1959.
Now, I'm kind of curious. Does this Oswald remember being in the waiting room and talking to Al before?
Right. And that's something really interesting to look at. This episode is, Sam has 9 leaps. 8 of them was Oswald.
Right.
Oswald went in the waiting room 8 times in his life.
Right.
That's got to have affected his life.
Mm-hmm. You would imagine so.
And I'm thinking of Chris's book.
Yes.
Which focuses on what does the leap do to the leapee. Which
the Quantum Leap podcast, you and me read through on the. That was 4 hours you're talking about, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I only was a partial participant in that because my turn reading was a disaster, and Chris ended up having to save me. But yeah.
But this is one of the questions Chris posed when writing that novel was, well, what's it look like on the other side?
Right.
What are we doing to these people?
Right.
And you've got to think that this many times coming here, it's going to stick with Oswald. It's going to have some residual.
You would think so.
And maybe is the project the reason he's so cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and kills the president in the freaking first place?
Maybe. Maybe Sam and this time-traveling project is responsible for the death of JFK. Perhaps. All right, so he's asking Oswald about string theory, which eventually he's able to just start quoting from memory. And then Oswald's like, wait, how do I even know that? And then we cut to Sam, who is spilling what he knows to the Russians. Al appears trying to stop him from saying anything.
He's telling them all about race car and everything about his experiences in Japan.
The Russians want him to write the info down, and Yuri suggests a place to eat and sends Oswald out of the room. And we see, it's interesting here that we see Yuri and his assistant talking while Oswald is out of the room, which is one of the few times we don't see something happening from Sam's perspective.
Right. And the whole point of this conversation is to tell us Sam did not just give them anything. Because their whole conversation is, Oswald doesn't know anything. We know more than he does.
Right.
Now, he's being honest with us and telling us what he knows. He just doesn't actually know anything important.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they're done with him.
Right.
They're not behind some big conspiracy.
Right.
Is, what we're being told. We're being told that they think he's a joke.
Mm-hmm. So, Sam wants to know why he's there in Russia. And Ziggy is working on it. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Ziggy. Your usual stellar work. Al thinks it's to uncover a conspiracy because that's what he's thought all along. And Sam doesn't think so, as in all the leaps that they've experienced so far, they have yet to uncover a conspiracy. And Sam wants to start to take the initiative, try to get ahead of things. Sam wonders if he prematurely exited the first leap before he had a chance to right the wrong. And Al says, success has nothing to do with leaping.
Right, we got that. We got that line again.
Which, by the way, the first time we heard that, when was that? Oh, yeah, that was in the very last episode, in the season finale. The first time we ever heard that success has nothing to do with leaping was in the season 3 finale.
Right.
Now, before that...
Season 4,
sorry. So, before that, we were under the impression that if you fail, you were going to get stuck somewhere.
Right.
But now we are being told, twice in 2 episodes, that success has nothing to do with leaping.
They're making sure we know the new rules.
Right, which we have never established. Other than us being told that randomly in the season 4 finale, we were not told that. And it's
maybe it's because he left into Al and like broke history a little bit is when the rules changed, and it was always that way now.
Right. Maybe. But yeah, I mean, I don't understand why they even started saying that, because it seems
they wanted to tell different stories.
Right. It just
they wanted it to not always know it's going to end well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess I get that, but it kind of like takes away the suspense if you know that Sam is basically going to leave no matter what.
Right.
But anyway, so I think that was kind of a weird thing to change. But and I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah, so we get that line here. But what Sam says is, I don't mean I failed. I meant I was never given the opportunity to change anything, and I left prematurely.
And Sam wonders why. Why he would leap before he had an opportunity. As Sam said, if he knew that, he would be able to get out of that leaping yo-yo. Al says he's on the right track, according to Ziggy. He needs to play things out exactly as Oswald did. No changing history. And he says he needs to go back to his hotel room, and before dinner, he needs to attempt to unalive himself.
Yeah. And my note here is, I never understood why.
Why he needs to go back.
I never understood why in this moment we're being told the only way out of this is to do nothing different and follow history exactly.
Right.
Like, we've never done that before.
Right.
Like, literally the point of leaping is to change things. So why is the way out of this all of a sudden do everything identical and don't change anything? I don't get why right now that's a thing.
And there's that point. The hotel scene, it is a haunting scene.
Well, we'll get there in a second.
Yeah. So, all right. So, they go back to the hotel
Let's do the scene and then we'll talk about it.
They go back to the hotel room. Sam doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to unalive himself. But he's told that Olga, which is the assistant.
It's his tourist guide.
Right. Is going to save him. But Sam wonders, hey, what if I change history to the point that now nobody's going to come and save me, so I'm just going to go ahead and unalive myself? And Al says that if he doesn't do it, he looks into this, the Russians are going to kick him out of the country. He isn't going to meet Marina, and history will not proceed as it did.
Right.
Now, my question is,
why is that a bad thing? Exactly. Like, shouldn't changing the course of this dude's life be, I don't know, helpful?
Right, yeah. Like, it sounds to me like if he doesn't do this, then he might prevent JFK's assassination.
Oswald won't become he might do something else.
Right.
But it'll change something.
Right.
And since we're stuck in this pattern, maybe changing something is a good thing.
Right.
Like, do something. Like, maybe getting kicked out of Russia prematurely would, help.
Right, yes.
And, it would probably be a whole lot better for Marina.
Right.
If she never marries this man, we'd be helping her out.
Yeah, it seems like they don't exactly have the greatest relationship.
We would make their two kids not exist, but...
Right. They exist in an abusive relationship, and their legacy is going to be that their father killed JFK. So, what kind of life were they going to lead? But anyway.
But they get sidetracked because Al tells him it's time.
Well, not only that, before that, though, Sam points to the fact that the Russians are going to kick him out as a means to disprove the KGB theory.
Right.
But Al thinks that it reinforces his CIA theory. And, so Sam...
Yeah, meaning that he's here working as an agent for the CIA to get information from the KGB. Right. Which is ridiculous. I think that whole thought is just way too convoluted for this kid who doesn't know anything about race cars. Right.
So Sam is refusing to go along with the whole attempted unaliving thing. Al starts reading from Oswald's diary and keeps getting hung up on Oswald's spelling mistakes. And then he says, somewhere a violin plays. And then seconds later it does.
Right, enforcing that, this is happening. And Sam realizes he better go along with it because he has to?
I guess. So Sam starts to, he starts to do what he's told, and then he leaves.
He leaves before actually, making a cut.
So, on the one hand, the scene is really long.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it is actually a really haunting scene, especially this moment with the violin.
Yeah.
So it's also kind of strong, but I also think that we could have trimmed it a little bit at the same time.
Okay, I have a big note here.
Okay. All right.
Our whole point is we have to do exactly what Oswald did and not change anything, which
Right.
I don't understand why, but that's what we're going with, right?
Right.
Is our mission right now is to repeat history exactly and not change a dang thing to the point where you're going to bleed your wrists and hope that somebody saves you.
Right.
Which Sam gets saved from having to do that because he leaps before it actually happens. But how do they know what happens? How do they know what he's supposed to do in detail?
I guess it was from his journal.
It's written in the diary.
Right.
Which
yeah.
Oswald's writing in this moment. I hear a violin playing.
So in his diary, he's writing as he's about to unalive himself.
He's writing it as he's doing it. This is what I'm about to do. I hear a violin playing, and when Olga comes to find me, she's going to find me.
Right.
And he thinks, she's going to find me too late. The point is, Sam's not writing this.
Okay. Yeah.
If he was doing exactly what Oswald did, he'd be rewriting this journal entry, word for word, based on what Al says, this is what you got to write. But he's not writing the journal entry.
Right.
Which means the journal entry shouldn't exist in this timeline.
Which means...
because nobody wrote it.
Right. So Sam changed history to the point where now Al shouldn't be reading from anything.
He changed history to the point where there'd be no record of this happening at all.
Right.
For them to even know that it's happening.
Wow. So that would in itself create a paradox.
Right. Because the whole reason you're doing this is to not change anything, but by deleting the record of it, you're changing something. Because this record is a part of the history that we know. And now the record's not here to back up this even happened. And who knows?
Unless Oswald writes it after the fact.
But the line, and now I hear a violin playing.
Okay.
Says he's writing it while the violin's playing.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get
Like,
you.
my first note was like, when did Oswald write this? Did he write this 2 days ago before Sam got here?
Right.
He doesn't write it after the failed attempt because, in his words, he doesn't think it's going to be a failed attempt.
Right.
And Sam hasn't written it. But then the whole violin line, and I'm like, no, he's writing this right now is when Oswald's supposed to be writing this. But Sam's not.
Right.
So you're already, like, not doing the thing that you said you're supposed to be doing.
Right, which is to change absolutely nothing.
Exactly. Like, that feels like a pretty big thing, is knowing he's supposed to be writing this so that we have a record of it.
All right.
Anyways, we leap to leap 6.
Yes.
April 10th, 1963, which is little over 2 weeks after his first leap.
Okay. So he finds himself running from dogs with a rifle, and he gets back home, and apparently he was coming back from an attempted assassination of General Walker. He's initially Sam, but then slides into Oswald, and he listens to the radio. He realizes he missed the target, and he's pissed at himself for how his plan fell apart. Al appears and realizes when Sam leaped in, which is in 1963. We've already covered that. Sam goes on and on about how he should have missed. It was an easy shot until Al tells him, basically yells at him, "You didn't miss, Oswald did." And Sam at this point slips back into Sam and says, "There's no need to shout. He can hear everything he says." Al, relieved, says he was still acting like Oswald, which according to Ziggy should not be happening anymore.
And my note was, why?
Right.
Which Sam will soon ask.
Yes. Sam asks him, "What did you do to fix this situation?" And Al explains that they leaped some neurons and mesons, individual neurons and mesons. They basically targeted what was Oswald and what was Sam, and leapt those neurons. And Sam gets really concerned here and says, "You can't do that without attracting more neurons and mesons, making the situation worse."
Right. So, 2 episodes in a row now,
Yeah.
they've been just playing with the accelerator and leaping people or things or pieces of people.
Right, yeah.
They're getting awful loose with the use of the accelerator at
Yes.
the project.
Yep. And Sam slips back into Oswald after Marina urges him to destroy his papers and everything.
It's a journal with all the plans in it about killing Walker.
Right.
So now that the assassination attempt has happened, she doesn't want anybody coming along and seeing that it was him. Right. So she wants him to destroy this journal, and he's like, I can't do that.
Yeah, this is everything that...
This is me.
Right, my plans, like my escape route, my political rationalization for assassinating him.
Exactly.
Right.
Marina says this is why you should destroy it.
Right. And Sam says if Walker didn't drop his head at the last second, he would be remembered as the person who killed Walker. And Sam leaps, and he leaps into Oswald as he's handing out leaflets.
We are now in leap number 7. It's August 9th, 1963. So 4 months later, and we're in New Orleans. And this is an actual moment from Oswald's history.
Mm-hmm. As he's handing out leaflets, he attracts the attention of a woman named Ellie LaForge, played by Julie Ann Lowry. This is her second appearance on the series. The first was in Miss Deep South. She only has 4 credits to her name.
She was also in 14 episodes of As the World Turns.
Mm-hmm.
And one interesting thing is this is an uncredited role for her.
Yeah.
I don't understand why. She has a full-on conversation with Sam.
Yes.
The police officer we're going to meet in a minute has like one line off camera and he's credited.
Right.
So I don't understand why she's uncredited, but she is.
So I'm kind of curious who Julie Ann Lowry was. Was she like a model or something?
I have no idea, but I definitely immediately recognized her from Miss Deep South.
Yeah.
But outside of these 2 Quantum Leap characters, I have no idea who she is.
Right. So Ellie is flirting with him until she gets upset when she realizes that he's married.
Well, also, she has a friend in this scene.
Yeah.
With lines, too, who's trying to pull her away, and she's like, I'll catch up with you, so the friend leaves. We don't get a name for that friend. We don't get a credited or uncredited listing for the friend.
But she does have a line.
She has lines, too. But she didn't even get an uncredited reference anywhere. Like,
wow.
There's no record anywhere of who she is.
So Al appears as Sam gets into a fight with people who are basically calling Sam a liar.
So, yeah, 2 people come up.
Yep.
Carlos and a friend. Carlos is played by James Medina, who was in 1 episode of MacGyver. And basically, he's saying Oswald's a fraud. Oswald is... The flyers he's passing out is to, like, help Cuba. And this is a Cuban guy who's like, he said he was here to help us, but he's a liar. He's not here to help us.
Right.
Oswald. So he's saying Oswald's a fraud and a liar and not helpful and trying to beat him up.
Right. And the police end up getting involved, and you said this police officer...
the New Orleans policeman is played by Chris Kincaid. He was in the movie My Sister's Keeper, which was the only thing on his credits I recognized.
Well, he should be really proud of himself because he has a name like that. Chris Kincaid. You can't get any better than that. It's a pretty cool name. But anyway, basically Al tells him that he needs to fight Oswald. Otherwise, when he leaps into the fateful day in Dallas, he won't be able to change anything. And then Sam leaps.
He leaps again.
And he actually leaps without ever reverting back to Sam. He's completely Oswald.
Right. Oswald has taken over. It's only Oswald here now. And we leap into Leap 8, November 21st, 1963, Dallas, Texas. It's the night before the assassination.
And he's watching Kennedy.
And he is Oswald.
Right.
There is no Sam here.
Right. He's watching Kennedy on television. And like my note says, he's completely Oswald at this point. He prepares in the morning.
Also notable that this is where we start getting all of the actual archive footage. So for the entire rest of this episode, we're going to be seeing archive footage mixed in with the episode footage. So this is on the TV, obviously, we're seeing this. But then in the next day, it's going to be kind of seamless. We're jumping back and forth between various archive footages as well as the new scenes.
And I will say that's pretty well done. For the most
It's
part.
very well done. I really like that they did that. They include. I always like when they include real footage, but they did it a lot in the next several scenes.
Yeah. So in the morning, he prepares to go on to assassinate the president. He looks at his baby and his daughter. He gives her a kiss. He takes off his wedding ring. And this is the most humanizing moment of the episode.
He leaves his ring and all the money in his wallet on the dresser for Marina because, again, this is Oswald in control now. It's Sam's body here, but Oswald is still there, which is very, very meta.
Right.
He knows he's not coming back.
Right.
He has no belief that he's going to get away with this. He's hoping he's successful in his mission.
Yes.
But he's not planning on getting out of it.
And all of that is conveyed without a single line of dialogue.
Yep.
Once again, Scott Bakula is amazing in this episode. And I kind of wish they did a little bit more of this kind of humanizing stuff for Oswald rather than just making him a monster through most of the episode. But that's, I've already gotten into that. So he gets his gun ready, and then he gets going. And then we come back to the project where he's talking to...
Before he goes, he takes... This is all real history. So I want to mention some of this stuff. This is what we actually know happened that day. The house that they're staying in right now, this is a woman named Ruth Payne. It's her house. He doesn't actually live there. Marina and the kids live there with Ruth. He actually lives at a boarding house across town, but he, stays over with his wife, I guess. I don't really understand what the heck's going on there. I don't know if they were, separated or what the deal was, but he had a separate residence, and then her and the kids were living in this house. So in Ruth Payne's garage is where this rifle was stored.
Gotcha.
That we see him retrieving, packing in brown paper, and then he puts it in the neighbor's car. This neighbor is the character of Frasier, which took me a hot minute to line up which character this is supposed to be because they don't tell us his name.
Yeah.
But Frasier's a real person.
Gotcha.
His name was Buell Wesley Frasier. He works with Oswald. He's actually the person who trained Oswald to do his job and would often give him rides to work.
Okay.
So this is the person who brought him to the book depository that morning.
Gotcha.
So the character of Frasier is played by Nathan Liesel, and his only other credit was a 1991 film, Babe Ruth.
Yes.
So he gets into Frasier's car, puts the rifle in the backseat, tells the guy it's a package of curtain rods. And then we go to the project.
Okay.
And it's February 16th, so we're one day later for Al.
He's talking to Gushy, played by Dennis Wolfberg. We're going to see more of Dennis Wolfberg this season. I think he has at least a couple other appearances. I know he's in
Including going into the imaging chamber.
Yes. He's in Killing Time, which is a fan favorite episode. And, of course, the series finale.
I wonder why it is he's the only person from the project that they bring back.
Maybe there's just not enough room for the rest of them.
But, was he the only one available? Could they not get the actresses that played Donna or Tina to make an appearance?
Yeah.
Because they obviously wanted to spend more time at the project this season.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure why that is. And, it's kind of funny because he's only in this one scene. But I remember Dennis Wolfberg being more in this episode than this one scene. I could have sworn that he had other appearances than he does.
Gushy's one of those characters that you forget we don't see all the time.
Right, because
his
he's mentioned
name is
constantly.
said every episode.
Right, yeah.
He is a character that we just don't see.
Well, I thought he appeared more in this episode. I thought we saw him more. The deleted scene or something along those lines.
I don't know. Because, again, we both just watched the Roku version.
Right, yeah.
And somebody, I posted it, I made a post in one of the Facebook groups that I was taking these notes, and somebody was like, oh, well, if you're doing it for the podcast, you really should get out the DVDs and watch the uncut version because there's cut scenes. And I was like, no, that's too much. I'm sure it's somewhere. I don't know if it's on one I own or not. I
don't think so.
I could have looked, but I didn't.
Even in the DVD version, they split it up into two parts.
I've got a couple different versions of the DVDs, but I didn't go as far as trying to figure out if any of them had the uncut.
Right.
I know it exists somewhere. But
Yeah,
I don't know if I have it or not. But I was like, no, this is good enough.
Right, yeah.
This is a lot.
We're already going to be doing 2 hours worth of talking, so... I don't even know where we are at this point, but it's...
Gushy.
Yeah, Gushy. So he's talking to Gushy. Al is now convinced that this is not a conspiracy, that it was just a lone assassin.
Right, Al has finally completely flipped his opinion of what's going on.
Gushy doesn't want to believe it, and Al says, I know, it's hard to believe that one man could take out Kennedy, because if that's true, what hope is there for the rest of us? And Al tells Gushy that he's going to find the truth, and we have this dramatic music playing. And then he goes
into the waiting room.
Right. And then we see Sam as he's going through more prep work.
He was dropped off at the book depository, leaves in a hurry, to the point where Frasier's like, what are you in such a hurry for? Right. They both work at the book depository. But Sam isn't going to work. He goes straight to the 6th floor and begins setting up for the events of the day.
And meanwhile, we see his family watching television from home. We see the Kennedy motorcade. Sam is at the book depository setting up to shoot him. And then we cut to Al, who's interrogating Oswald, who's lying constantly and really pissing Al off.
Right. And Al's like, listen, I know you're going to shoot the president. I just want to know, is anybody else working with you? Right. That's all I want to know.
And eventually he takes out a gun and threatens him. And Oswald, after Al takes a shot, is basically like, okay, I'll tell you. It isn't me, it's Alec, which of course we know.
Is
Al
Oswald.
knows. Yeah, is Oswald.
So he's trying to pretend that Alec is a different person, and that's who's going to shoot the president, and you better go find him. We also, in the middle of cutting in and out of this, we see more of Marina. She's joined by Ruth Payne, who is the woman who owns the house. She's played by Becky London. She's in 3 episodes of Law and Order and the film United 93.
Okay. Which was a 9/11 movie.
Right.
One that I avoided because I don't really... I try to avoid movies about 9/11 because, I saw that happen live on TV. I don't need to see recreations of it.
Well, it's funny because it's comparable to Kennedy assassination.
It is.
Like Sam's story here of where he was that day, which is like a real phenomenon. People who were around in, when this happened.
Yeah.
That's the thing is, where were you when Kennedy was shot, right?
Right. Yeah.
For us, for our generation, it's where were you on 9/11?
Right.
And it's a very mirrored experience.
Yeah, I see that.
Where that's the conversation you can have when you talk about these things is, well, where were you that day? Everybody knows.
Right.
Everybody knows where they were on these 2 occasions,
yes.
depending on how old you are.
Right.
And, which ones you were alive for.
Yeah, there are people that I work with now that were alive for neither.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So... That's a bad thought, but I'm sure there's going to be something that's going to be the next generation's where were you moment thing.
Right, yes.
I hope it's nothing too terrible.
Right.
Or that it's waits long enough that we're no longer here to experience it.
Yeah. So, basically, Oswald, while looking into the mirror, starts talking as Sam, and Sam is telling Al that he's lying and that he needs to stop him, that he's the lone assassin, and Al says, I can't reach you. Like, Oswald is completely taken over. And Sam says that he has to find a way. So Al ends up leaving Oswald, and Oswald thinks that he's tricked Al, when he very much has not. Because he keeps repeating, Alec is the one who's going to assassinate the president.
Because Oswald pops back up over control and is like, you need to find Hidel.
Right. So Al appears to Sam, who's in the book depository, ready to shoot Kennedy. Al is desperately trying to reach him. He brings up the Pauli exclusion principle. He brings up the 4 fundamentals of quantum physics or whatever.
And it's not working this time.
This time it's not working. And then Al gets an idea. And he tells him, hey, your dad is alive. Right now, he is teaching, you are 10 years old, and he is teaching you how to ride a tractor. And he's getting more and more desperate. And Dean Stockwell is fantastic in this moment. As he's like emotionally trying to tell Sam, get through Sam, saying, hey, your dad is alive right now. And this eventually reconnects Sam's mind. And as he does so, Sam leaps.
Yeah, he says, Dad.
Right.
And
great moment, by the way.
Just when he's finally in control and can actually stop the shooting.
Yeah.
He leaps again.
Yes. And by the way, I could watch this scene about 1,000 times because it's so fantastically done. But yeah, so he leaps.
So this is leap 9.
Yes,
he's finally not Oswald anymore.
Right.
We're in the same day, moments later, Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. He's leaped into a Secret Service agent. He's in the motorcade.
He is Clint Hill.
Yes,
a real life person who did do exactly what Sam did in the scene. By the way.
Mm-hmm. So Clint Hill no longer gets credit for that. It was actually Sam Beckett. So he runs after a momentary moment of confusion to try to save Kennedy. But Oswald, now back in his own body, starts shooting despite Al's desperate attempts to stop it. He's a hologram. He can't influence anything.
Right.
And he watches as Kennedy is killed.
Yep.
Sam... Oh, yeah. So
Sam does, again, exactly what Clint Hill does. And again, we're jumping back and forth between actual archive footage and a production of Scott Bakula doing this. And it's really a beautiful scene.
Yes.
And you can clearly see the cuts, obviously. But it's okay. Mm-hmm. Because it's like really beautiful that
Yes.
we're taking this moment and all of the different videos that exist of this moment, and then we're adding this like fictional cut to it.
Right.
And it's really quick, but it's beautiful. And
I agree.
You get the point that like, oh, that real life dude was Sam in this moment.
Now, I have plenty of objections to this episode's existence and how it feels or doesn't feel like Quantum Leap. But this ending scene and all that stuff, beautifully, beautifully done. So
We skip to the hospital.
yes, and Sam thanks Al, saying if he hadn't, if he hadn't reached him, then he would have been the one to kill JFK. Though he doesn't get a chance to say that because Al kind of cuts him off and says it would not have been you, not really.
Yeah,
pulling
even
the
though
trigger.
it would have been.
Right.
Because he already told us, like, he's in there.
Right.
Even though he's not in control, he can see everything and hear everything. So he would have that memory of doing it, even though he wasn't in control.
Right. So Sam laments. Oh, yeah. So basically, Al tells him that when his mind reconnected, he leapt into the closest person who could accomplish his mission. And Sam is like, but I didn't accomplish it. Kennedy is dead. And then this is when Al says, well, actually...
Your Swiss cheese mind doesn't remember, but...
Yeah, you were actually here to save Jackie, because in the original history, she was killed,
She died, too.
And Sam leaps.
And Sam leaps out, and this is another beautiful image.
It is.
It mirrors the beginning of the episode where he leapt into Oswald's picture. In this moment, he leaps out of Clint Hill's picture, a famous picture of Clint Hill standing in the hospital.
Yeah.
Mourning the loss of Kennedy.
Right.
And we're left with that real-life image that Sam just leapt out of.
Yeah. So, I get it.
And then we see photos of the aftermath and the funeral and Jackie and her kids, and that's the episode.
So I get why they ended the episode that way, but one, my 11-year-old self groaned at it, and I don't feel any differently about it now. I can't help but kind of feel like it's a cop-out.
In a way, yes. I agree with you. It is.
And I can't help but feel that, if we had trimmed this episode down and maybe not made it 2 hours long, because we could have. There's a lot of...
We could have cut out half of those scenes.
Right,
half of the whole leaps we could have cut out.
Maybe if it were that one solitary 45-minute episode, I would still be annoyed by that ending, but I wouldn't feel as badly about it as I do.
Okay.
I think.
In one hand, I do agree with you that it does feel like a cop-out, and it's just kind of like this really weird resolution of what the heck were we leaping about.
Right.
And it still doesn't explain why we had to leap 9 times to do that.
And it also comes back to my question, is it worth it?
Right.
Is leaping into this famous person worth it to tell this story? And I kind of feel like, no, it wasn't. Even though there's a lot of solid scenes in this episode.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, I keep saying, I have mixed feelings about that resolution. I do kind of get a little tingly when he's like, no, that's not the history. And we're told conclusively, the world we've been watching is Sam Beckett's world.
Right.
He's here. He's fixing things. He is making the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
And just something about that fact was always this cool little twist for me.
Yeah, and I see that, but yeah. At the same time, it's just, yeah. Every time I watch it, I go, ugh. Okay, but anyway. All right.
For a moment, I want to compare it to, how do you feel about, and of course we'll talk about this a lot more in depth when we get there, compare it to the Marilyn Monroe episode.
I feel differently about that.
Where we are changing history, but not changing history, but having a fictitious history that we're changing.
Mm.
Where in that episode, basically, we're claiming that she died earlier in the original history and he extended her life. To the date that she dies now.
Which is a similar problem that we have with this.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel a little differently about it, as I'm not sure, because I think that is a better character study of Marilyn Monroe than this was of Oswald. So I kind of feel like, I feel like I'd be better answering that question when we get to that episode.
Yeah, I was just curious of your your historical thought on that.
But
have you never really thought about it that way?
I have thought of it, and I think the question still applies. Is it worth it? I think in that episode, I'm inclined to say yes, because I think it's a good character study of the character of Marilyn Monroe, like where we get to know her,
right? But
we get to care about her.
The whole point of his leap is he extends her life long enough to make one more movie that in their original history didn't exist, but in our world exists.
It's a similar problem, and it's not something that you can get around.
Yeah.
Like the only way
because you want to claim we changed history, but they also don't want to change history.
The only way to not do that would be to leap earlier in Marilyn Monroe's life and not have it be about trying to stop her from dying.
Yeah.
I think the episode that does it best, in my mind, is Memphis Melody, where he leaps into Elvis. Because really, that story isn't even about Elvis.
Right, he doesn't change Elvis's life at all.
He does. He temporarily screws it up.
Right, he doesn't. But it doesn't. He's not there for Elvis.
Right. So yeah, I agree that there's similar problems in the Marilyn Monroe episode that I have with this episode. It doesn't feel as bad though for me because I think it's a stronger episode overall. In that it's more of a character study of Marilyn Monroe.
Okay.
And that we get to know her and we get to care about her. And yeah. But I think it still kind of suffers from that same issue. I just don't think it kills the episode as much, if that makes any sense.
Sure. I think it's maybe a little more subtle, too.
Yeah.
Than like the death of JFK.
Right, yeah.
And was Jackie killed. Right.
And I feel like this is not going to be the last time that we have this discussion. I think that we will definitely resume it when we get to those episodes. Yeah. Because, I might watch it and have a different feeling about it this time through than I do now. But, yeah.
So Jackie Kennedy in this episode, who we get to see a little bit at the end, in, those recreation scenes and at the hospital. She's played by Karen Ingram. She was in the movie Dumb and Dumber.
Okay.
And then there's two characters in this episode that I wasn't able to match up when we met them. So I've got them here. We've got Corporal McBride. Don't know who that was in the episode. Somebody from one of the military scenes. He was played by Michael Lopez, who was in an episode of Twilight Zone and an episode of Who's the Boss.
Okay.
And then we have a character credited as Guard. I have no idea Guard of what, who, when in this episode. He was played by Max Lazar. Just credited as Lazar, by the way.
Yeah.
He was in an episode of Jag and an episode of MacGyver. So that seems perfectly fitting for some unnamed character. And that's everybody that was in the episode.
All right. Do we have any further thoughts about this episode? Or actually, you want to talk a little bit about, the next episode we're going to do?
Oh, yeah, because we don't have a leap out.
Right.
Right. So it ends there without any, it gives no direction of where we're going next.
Right.
So if you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
And I don't know. I get why they do that.
Yes.
And when we have these powerful endings, but also it kind of makes you feel like you got cheated a little bit in the next episode because you never had that leap in moment.
Right.
And there's a handful of those episodes that never had a leap in.
Right.
We do that a whole lot in the revival, which I hated.
Yes.
I hated it.
I know that we had quite a few conversations about that.
Speaking of the leap outs, there was one other thing I wanted to bring up, and I skipped it when we were doing it.
Are you talking about the leap in to Oswald that we saw in the season finale?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is the fact that where the heck are my notes about this? It was like early in my notes, and where's page 2? Here we go. So this is actually. The leap in for this episode is actually a complete reshoot from the leap out of A Leap for Lisa.
Right.
Now, sometimes there's like a different cut used between the two, but they're not a whole reshoot. They're just a different cut of the footage they took.
Right.
In this case, they completely reshot it, and that's because they recast the actress that played Marina. So for the leap out, it was a totally different actress that played her, and that was Mia Drake Inderbitsen.
Gotcha.
I probably said that very wrong.
It's interesting because when they did that leap out, so they knew what the season premiere of season 5 was going to be.
Right.
But they hadn't shot it yet.
Right.
So, yeah, that's kind of interesting.
So they hadn't cast.
Yeah. Anybody, really,
what
at that
was her
point.
name? Natasha
Pavlovic.
They had this other actress do it, and apparently they didn't decide to keep her on for the episode. And I don't know why. Did they not want her? Was she not available?
Right.
I don't know. But similar to what we do in Back to the Future,
Yes.
we reshot this whole scene so that it could be with the actress that's actually going to be in the episode.
Yeah, and I think we might end up covering the Back to the
Eventually
Future
we have
trilogy.
to.
Yes, we definitely do.
But we did that in Back to the Future.
Yeah.
The ending scene of the first movie and the opening scene of the second movie, they refilmed that whole
Right, because it was a
final scene.
a completely
because
different actress.
We switched
playing
actresses, and they're like,
Jennifer.
"Oh, well, we're gonna pretend it was that actress because we're just gonna reshoot that little bit and
Right.
do it over."
Mhm.
And that's exactly what they did here with Marina.
Gotcha. All right.
We were gonna talk about what comes next.
Yes.
Leaping of the Shrew.
Yes. Preliminary thoughts. I don't think it's an earth-shattering episode or anything about that. It's definitely derivative of many movies and
it's
television shows, but
Very directly
Yeah.
derivative of Blue Lagoon.
yeah, which of course featured Brooke Shields,
Right.
So
And it's overly derivative of that, if you ask me.
yeah,
It's very blatantly obvious that they're putting her in this role in order to copy that story.
right.
And I feel like that's
That's
a season 5 ploy, I feel like.
yes, it's definitely part of NBC's edict of more famous people. We bring in Brooke Shields, who was a hot actress at the time, and I don't mean in appearance wise because she was, but I mean she was someone
Very
that was,
notable.
Yes, very notable at the time. So that was a very big stunt casting. Bring in Brooke Shields to boost the ratings,
Right?
Because that's what season 5 was really all about.
Yeah.
And season 5 in general, it's a controversial season for sure.
Yeah.
Like this episode is really controversial to start with.
It's a conversation you can have about so many shows and their final seasons.
Yeah.
And it's usually in final seasons where things go off the wall and we start breaking our own rules and they just start throwing stuff to see what sticks.
Well, here's the funny thing is yes, it's controversial and a lot of people don't like season 5.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in that camp.
No.
I enjoy quite a bit of season 5.
Me as well.
I don't think there's not even that many episodes I can look at and dread. Especially look back at season 4.
I like lots and lots
Yeah.
of episodes from season
Yeah.
5. Some of my favorite episodes. I like some of the more
off the wall.
let's break the rules episodes. They're the ones I remember.
I can only think of one episode that I don't like.
Which one
and
is that?
that's Blood Moon, which
Okay,
was
yeah.
Tommy Thompson's final episode.
Yeah, and that's a weird one. And I don't even say I dislike it.
I'm not even saying I don't like it. I'm just saying it. It's not like one.
It's a lower quality episode for sure.
It's more gothic horror, which I've been on record as saying I don't really like gothic horror that much. So it's just a personal taste thing. I don't think it's a bad episode.
We know Tommy Thompson even said he hates the episode.
Yes,
so,
yes, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any dread of season 5.
Right.
I look forward to season 5.
And looking back at prior seasons,
there's a lot of slow and
Yeah.
episodes I don't like in little pockets
right.
throughout all the seasons.
Yeah.
Season 5, I think overall was probably my favorite season. If we're looking at taking the entire season as a whole,
Yeah.
I don't dislike season 5 at all.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about it as a season.
Yeah. So
So we're going to have good things to say.
yeah.
Even on some of the episodes where other people might disagree with us. Trilogy.
Right,
Which
yeah.
is my favorite. And I know it's got so much hate out there, that series of episodes. But I love it.
All right.
And I'll defend it.
So next
Die
week,
on that hill.
next week we got Leaping of the Shrew. I think that's probably one of the more or less interesting episodes of the season. But we'll see how we react to it when we watch it again.
Okay.
And give us your thoughts about that episode and this one as well. Stacie, can be reached at?
I can reach on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, the number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee. You can join the Core Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribe to the channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.